Planning Commission meeting Monday, October 3rd. I would invite any members of the public who wish to address us to do so from the podium and to limit their remarks to 3 minutes. I'd like to call everybody to order and welcome you all. I think we've got a full house tonight. And the first order of business is the approval of the minutes from July the 5th. And I think present at that meeting were myself, Ted, Jeremiah, Ken and Mike. So they're the ones who will vote on that. And I'd like to ask for a motion to approve those minutes. So Ted and a seconder.
Second.
Ken, all in favour? Who were there?
Aye.
Aye. So that's unanimous on that particular one. And moving on, the second one is the meeting of the minutes for the meeting of September the 6th, at which was Steve, Ken, Brandon and Mike. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Make a motion.
Brandon got the motion, Mike seconded it. All in favour who were there?
Aye. Aye.
That's unanimous, and so we have those minutes sorted. So, the first thing is Carroll County. Hang on a second, I think it's Carroll County.
Yes.
Carroll County.
Hi. Good
Hi there.
evening.
Welcome.
All right. So just our usual updates. The comprehensive rezoning ag and conservation districts went to public hearing, I think it was 10 days ago today. And my update says that they're discussing the proposal again. It's actually the following Thursday, so I think that might be the maybe 13th. The deadline for the fall amendment to the Water and Sewer Master Plan was September 1st. There likely won't be a spring update as we're working on the triennial update. The CTP tour is scheduled for Thursday, October 13th at 2 p.m. That is with elected officials. And then the Transportation Master Plan, staff is introducing that to our Planning Commission on the 5th. This coming up Wednesday, it's a virtual meeting. And then from there, we'll be scheduled for September 18th, and we'll be taking just individual chapters to them one at a time. Any questions?
I think not. Anybody else?
I have just one quick question. I didn't know, were there any applications in town for the water and sewer update?
No.
This time? Okay.
No.
Because we have the one project there on Schoolhouse Road that there was some issue
Yeah, we
there.
haven't heard anything.
Okay.
Good, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that. So, moving on to item 3 on the agenda, we need to appoint a Planning Commission Vice Chair. It's come up before, and since we're all here tonight, there's no escaping it, guys. Okay, we have to do it. Do I have anyone who is prepared to put themselves forward at this point to be a Vice Chair? The reality is I miss very few meetings. I missed the last one, so is anybody willing to have a go at being Vice Chair and take over the Brandon?
I mean, I'll do it if nobody else wants to step up.
Good man.
First.
Does anybody have any issue with Brandon being Vice Chair? Does anybody rather be Vice Chair than Brandon?
I'm going to nominate him. That's the case.
All right, so we have a nomination and a seconder from Steve and Ken, and all in favour? Aye. Brandon,
Congratulations. Thank you.
Highly honoured.
The town appreciates your service.
Okay, well that was quick and simple. So moving on to the council referral of the draft sign ordinance. So Joe or Kevin, do you want to fill us in on the rationale for that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just go over again what's in the staff report, just a kind of quick summary. So the purpose of this amendment was to introduce some new regulations that encourage the effective use of signs as a means of communication in the town without creating visual clutter, becoming a public nuisance, creating blight, or posing hazard through unregulated placement. It also aims to maintain the unique character of the town, create an attractive business climate, promote pedestrian and vehicular safety, and enable fair enforcement of these regulations. And the amended ordinance also condenses certain pieces of the existing ordinance just to make it a little more concise. So, Planning Commission is just being asked to review and discuss the amending ordinance, and if you guys feel comfortable, make a recommendation to council.
Okay. I just have one question about it. I mean, I recognise the need to clean up the language. I don't think we have any farms in the community anymore and all that stuff. There's two types of signs, several classifications within that, permanent and temporary. I can only ever remember a couple of issues coming up with signs since I've been on the Planning Commission. I think one was with the Sandusky Road at the Shell station with the illuminated sign up there, which was going to be too big in the application. The second one came up when one of our businesses started using the sidewalks for dining. And we discussed signs as part of that, and I was asked to go off and do some research about what other municipalities had in terms of regulations. And I reported back to the council at that point that many other towns had restrictions on that, or had requirements of certain footage of sidewalk, which actually exceeded the one that we had without anything on it, because we have very narrow sidewalks in some parts. And I reported that back to the council. There were a number of business people at that meeting, for those of you who were still here might remember, who were really quite vocal about the fact that they decided that they needed, for their business purposes, to be able to use that sidewalk. And to cut a long story short, the mayor and town council, as was then, decided that they would not act on that particular issue, and we would maintain the status quo. Well, it says here in the preamble to it, in the new sort of rationale for signs, that we are doing this ordinance in order to avoid a public nuisance, a hazard, and one of the subclauses is to promote pedestrian and vehicular safety. It actually mentions pedestrian. And as you go through, if you look at the permanent signs, I think no sign shall impede motorists' visibility. It talks about no signs projecting into street right of way or be located more than 12 inches above the parapet wall and roofline. But in the actual temporary sign language, there's actually no mention of pedestrian right of way at all. And I wondered if that was deliberate, that we just want to avoid that issue, because those temporary signs, basically sandwich boards placed outside, can leave very, very little right of way for pedestrians. And I just wondered if anybody else had any comments on that, or if you felt that that was still an issue.
Well, I can say that the A-frame signs that you're talking about, the sandwich board signs, would fall under the definition of temporary signage, and they would not, and it wasn't necessarily a conscious decision that we were trying to avoid anything. It was just simply because that wasn't already in our regulations. We weren't prepared to add that. There are historic district guidelines that discuss A-frame signs or sandwich board signs, but I don't think there's any mention of how much width of sidewalk must remain. So if that's something that we want to consider, we can certainly make that recommendation back to council, or we can work on language specifically in this, just to make sure that maybe just a clause somewhere in that temporary signage section that says any temporary sign that is placed on a sidewalk must leave at least X number of feet of clear space, clear travel space.
So I went down just now, and years ago I measured it, and I didn't remember the measurement, so it varies, as you know, all the way up.
Sure.
It varies from as wide as 8.5 feet in places, right down to 4.5 feet, and 3.5 feet if you count the actual utility poles. So if you place a 9 square foot, maybe 2.5 by 4 or whatever it might be, on one of those sections, you're leaving essentially maybe 3.5 feet for people to pass on a sidewalk. To me, that's a bit of an issue. Okay, if we're really grasping this nettle and really making a change in signs, that is the major issue that we have with signage. Everything else is going to be high enough. It's not going to be an issue, outside that particular sidewalk area. Everything seems to be dealt with in a rational way. But it seems to me we're not really grasping the nettle with that one. And again, I'd invite comments about that. That's my observation on it at this particular point.
Good point. Yeah, I agree. That's a real good point.
So if that's the case, and it isn't safe for pedestrians within a certain amount of feet of right of way, what do we think that that amount should be? What's the minimum?
It's going to have an ADA component as well.
I want to say, we can obviously go back and do research on that. I want to say it's 3 feet of passable space must be included on the sidewalk. So, I think at the bare minimum that should be the regulation.
Okay. I would find that acceptable.
Yeah, just add it.
If you want to add that language, that any temporary signage must leave at least 3 feet of passable space on the existing sidewalk.
I would also cross-reference or at least double check the historic guidelines as well to see if there's any conflicts in the historic guidelines signage from this as it relates to all of it, but certainly with the A-frame or potential temporary sign.
I think in looking at the historic guidelines, I think the only difference is any temporary sign, at least according to the zoning regulations, in the historic or in the downtown district can be up to, I think it's 9 square feet.
Right.
Whereas in the historic district guidelines, specific just to the sandwich board signs, each face can't be more than 8 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a little bit of a difference there, but it still falls within the regulations that are being proposed.
I've got a few other questions, if I may. Talks about the only banner across a roadway is Oklahoma Sandusky Road. Is there any reason that is the case?
We didn't want other banners across the road.
Okay.
We just wanted to keep that one.
Anywhere, just that one.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there, with this adoption, if it stands, are there any grandfather issues we have with existing signs out there, permanent or otherwise, that are going to become an issue or not?
I don't believe so. And again, that's why we have the regulations the way we do, specifically on the temporary signage. Because again, it's 32 square feet when you're outside of the downtown district and 9 square feet inside. And again, those are just the temporary signage.
Yeah.
The permanent signage still has the same regulations that are existing. It might be reworded a little bit, but the regulation itself did not change.
But the best we know, no grandfather. Got it.
Correct.
I guess I will bring it up. It seems we have, in one of the sections, taken away some of the definitions of obscene. Is the broad intent now meant?
Yeah. So one of the other purposes of this amendment, and a little bit of background, it is somewhat funny. We've coined this the Grassley Amendment because one of the council members actually brought up a very particular issue with election signage. But because that issue was brought up, it was also made clear to us from our town council, and council as in lawyers, that we had some content-based regulation within our ordinance, and that's not constitutional anymore. So we had to remove some of those provisions. And that particular section that specifically talked about the offensive pieces were a little too broad, let's put it that way. So they asked us just to remove some of that language so that it just became very, it just left that obscene word. That was the only thing that was in there.
And I guess, how do we define obscene? By whose definition? Because that's where I'm kind of going with this. Not that I want to go put up pictures, but I know there were some temporary folks walking around with some pictures down there that some may consider obscene, others may not consider obscene. So I'm trying to understand what that may be.
Good luck with that one.
Yeah, it's going to be a constant battle trying to figure that out.
But the reason that stayed and the rest didn't, so I had raised some issues in reference to just like civil liberties, because a lot of things can be construed as obscene by any particular person. The lawyer said that word has some legal precedent, the word obscene behind it, right, Joe? And didn't they say, like, that's why that stayed and the rest of it went away in the ordinance?
Just inquiring.
Yeah.
You can show us the signs you plan on putting downtown later.
No.
all of your signs
Just a
are gonna
lovely ice
require-
cream and a coffee, that's all. Signs that do not have a fixed location. And I guess it's not a definition, but it's including mobile type signs. Is a mobile type sign painted on a vehicle?
I was going to ask the same question.
Because if that's the case, we have no commercial vehicles allowed in the town.
Well, that particular regulation is only for signs that require zoning certificates.
Okay.
So if
Fixed.
it does,
Got it.
yeah, if it doesn't require, basically what you're bringing up would be a sign that wouldn't require a zoning certificate.
All right, so the question that I had during the council meeting where I was confused about certain types of signage. It seems like there could be other people that could read this ordinance and also get confused in reference to what is what, and is there a way for us to be able to designate it even more clearly than it is now? Is that something else that we could just take one more gander at?
We can, and as a
When
matter,
I read through it, you have to be particular in terms of like when you're, which section of the ordinance you're looking at.
Well, even so, it's saying that under the fixed signs, no movable signs shall have a fixed location. I think that's what it's saying here. It's really confusing. This, regardless of where it is in the document, is really confusing.
I think what might help is just getting a clean version of the ordinance in front of everybody so that you can actually see the particular section. But the idea being that no sign should be allowed that is mobile in the way that it's defined in that particular section. And in order for a mobile sign to be in downtown, it would have to be considered temporary. Therefore, it would have to meet the size limitation that we want. So again, that's really how all of that is designed. Is so it forces you that if you're going to have some sort of mobile sign in the downtown district, that it has to comply with the temporary size requirements.
Got it. In that case, I would further define it then, and somehow so that painted on a vehicle is allowed, but fixed to a vehicle would not be. Because a box truck on a vehicle would still be larger than the temporary sign allowed.
Okay.
And so would a semi.
And so would a semi, not that we have many coming down, but yeah, same thing.
Right.
Just not that I really wanted to, get so. But it's here. It has been changed. Now it's open. So.
Oh no.
Now's the time.
I'm one of those people that when this was introduced to council, before it actually even before it was referred to the planning commission, one of the first things I said is the sign ordinance can be a black hole for planning. It just in general is that once you go down the rabbit hole, it's hard to stay productive in the conversation.
It can, and then
so you try to be as concise as you can within any kind of change to that regulation. But again, it's a good point. You can make those clarifications.
Pennants. What is a pennant? A pinwheel, similar circus or carnival type of tractors. What is a pennant?
Yeah, it's like a flag.
It's like a flag, like those things you see in front of the mobile stores?
Right.
A little.
Got it.
Yes.
Got it. Okay, and this is in the permanent sign.
Got to keep that separate.
That's the tricky part.
It is.
No comment. That's all I had.
Temporary signs, you can get away with some of this stuff, so as long as it's not larger than the size limitation.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
So, anybody got anything else they want to
Yeah,
do?
I had one other question. This is just for my clarity. And it's under permitted signs, and I believe these would be permanent. No closer to any public highway than the required front yard requirement of the district. Is that referring to the setback?
Setback.
Okay, because I've never sort of seen it phrased that way,
Yeah.
the front yard.
And we can specify in there setback.
No, I'm fine, yeah.
Well, just to make it clear.
I wasn't sure.
I'm sorry.
What section?
That is it was 4 crossed out, now it's D under, let's see. It would be
Oh, here it is. Okay. Improvement sign.
Section B.
Section A, Section B,
I'll replace.
down to,
B3D.
there we go.
And I just wanted to make sure that they had that.
In the new.
B4D.
Setback. It's here.
Or no, actually it's 3. It's B3D, old 4.
The new vice
Yeah.
chair was right.
Who's metal already?
So, Mike, you wanted to say?
Just going back to what Phil had mentioned before, can we also just verify, and Steve mentioned it, but I just wanted, I don't know if it was picked up, is that, can we look at if there's a distance requirement within ADA that it has to be 3 feet? So imagine,
Yeah.
okay, so
We'll
we'll add
clarify.
that, just to make sure that there's turning.
Yep.
Okay.
Anybody got anything else? So that being said, it might be better to clarify the language and then bring it back to the next meeting for a recommendation rather than try to do
I
it
agree.
tonight.
Yep.
Okay. So we'll table that for then.
Yeah, well, it doesn't have to be tabled, just
Just move on.
not ready for recommendation.
Not ready for recommendation yet. Okay. So we're moving to town updates and correspondence.
Yeah, talk about that one.
Correspondence we just received.
Correspondence.
Before we get to that,
I'm gonna wait on that
before we get to that, because we heard a few folks talking about it earlier, so 7306 Springfield, which is the old automotive garage up on Springfield. So there's a pending BZA case for that. We just got the check today, so we're going to try to set the hearing, all the dates tomorrow. Basically, what it is that spot zoned as local business. In local business, a service garage or an auto repair garage is a non-conforming use, so basically it's not allowed unless it's already existing. So I guess our determination was that there were no business operations happening there for a number of years. They are appealing to the contrary, that they have been in constant business operations there. So it is their right to take that to the BZA to appeal our decision, staff's decision. So that hearing is pending. So that's
Interesting.
So that's what we're waiting for now.
Yeah.
So they have claimed
No,
they've
until
had
tomorrow.
operating business for all these years there?
That is their claim, yes.
What's the name of the business?
When's it open?
Tom's Automotive.
Yeah, I mean the sign out there is Tom's Total Automotive.
And I'm assuming it's a registered business with the state of Maryland, has been registered for all these years and active and in good standing.
These are all facts that will come out in the BZA case.
Right. Right. And just like I said, it is regardless of it is their right to take it to the BZA and have their appeal and say that present evidence
People in there,
that they see that they want to have. So.
They're in there now, regular.
Oh, okay.
So,
Get an oil change.
is there anything else in the town that we need to discuss?
I'll just let everybody know. So we still are awaiting a decision from the Open Meetings Compliance Board. I know there was a complaint filed against really town council several months ago. We still have not received a decision on that. There is a letter in front of everybody regarding the Warfield, let's just call it issue. But again, it has been responded to already. I'll make sure everybody gets a copy of the response. It was short and sweet. But again, as of right now, there has been no other substantial communication regarding Warfield. Really, outside of that, I don't think everything else is business as usual.
Okay, good. So, anybody got anything else they want to bring up, discuss? If that's the case, then I move that we adjourn. Do I have a seconder?
Second.
All in favour? Good to go. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It was short and productive. It's good. Thank you. I'd like everybody to read their correspondence.